All right, and take it away.
All right. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Jason Swan. I'm the Customer Success Manager over here at OrderTime. The goal today is to display and build out a few of the most commonly requested reports from you guys, our customers. As we go through each report, I'll kind of explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing, especially in the order that I'm doing it. And that'll make a little bit more sense as we dive into it. Some of you that I've worked with before will know exactly what I'm talking about, especially when we're adding our tables. At the end, we'll open up a Q&A. Ideally, the Q&A focuses a little bit more on the overall structure of reporting, but we can kind of try to tackle some of the more specialized reports if it falls in the right category. If not, we'll just ask you to send those over to support@ordertime.com, and we will try to tackle those one by one as they come in. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to tackle the item ledger report. The item ledger report is going to be the report we think every customer should have in their file. Anytime you have any issues or questions about the quantity that OrderTime is showing or the value amount, this is the report that we as a support team are always going to go to and check first. So having it in your file and filtered by individual items first is going to be key. That way we can just swap out the item as it comes up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the top here and we're going to go to reports. We're going to go to reports again. And we're going to build one from scratch. So I'm going to use the new report button here at the top. Here we're looking at all the groupings. When we select a grouping, it gives us a predefined list of tables. And because when we're tracking inventory movement, and we want to get as specific as possible for things like transfers and adjustments. So we want movement with bins. So I'm going to start with that grouping. Now, before I start adding any tables to a report, we always want to set the type of the report first. Tabulars are standard. We have summaries. We have pivots. We'll look at pivot a little bit later. And we have our ledger report. This is what we're going to try to tackle on this one. So we're going to use ledger. And then we're going to start adding our tables in. When we add our tables in, we always want to start at the top and work our way down. The common question I get all the time is, why are these not alphabetical? The reason is because they have priority. When you add in a table like items first, notice docs and bins, the serial above it. If I add this in, those tables disappear. They're no longer an option. So we always have to start at the top and we work our way down based on the information we need. Docs are going to have things like transaction type, date, posting date. So we know we need that table. I'm going to go ahead and drag that in. Bins, lot, and serial number. This is going to have things like inventory movement into individual bins. It's going to have my lot serial number movement. So again, we're trying to get detailed information. We definitely want that table. We want our items name information. So I'm going to drag that in. I personally like to know what customer or vendor the transaction is attached to. So I want to drag in that table. I definitely want to know the location name, which warehouse the transaction's involved in. And then I want to add in my bin table. My bin table tells me the individual location inside of my warehouse. So I'm going to bring that in. Now, one thing to note is every time you add a table, it joins with another table. And you can see the joins over here in the middle. Notice the location is joined with the document. This becomes a problem on transfers. It'll only use the primary location or the from location. So we always want to change that join on this type of report to join with the actual bin and lot serial number. This way we can see the inventory come out of one bin on a transfer and go into another bin. Okay, we're going to start with this from here, and then we'll see if we need to come back and add additional tables later. So I'm going to go to my columns tab, and I'm going to start adding in pieces of information that I need. For me, it's just easier to follow the straight flow, and I'm going to work one table at a time and work my way down. As I add in a field, I'm always going to check the menu options at the bottom. When we're talking about a ledger type report, there are fields at the bottom on each one that we want to make sure is assigned correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in my date, because when you're talking about a ledger, date is very important. I drag in my date field, I select it, and you see it opens a menu down here at the bottom. I have my ledger column is set to data. I actually want that to be set to date. This is how it's going to organize each of the individual transactions, oldest to newest. The next thing I'm going to come in here is I'm going to add in the transaction number. I want to know what number document it was. So if I think it's incorrect, I can go check the document and make sure it's accurate. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look for, you can add posting date if you want to. I will just for giggles. So it's on here. Now I'm leaving date, posting date as data. And then doc number is also staying as data. I'm going to come down here, and the last thing I want off of this table is going to be my transaction type. The transaction type is going to tell me whether or not it's a work order, a receiver, an adjustment. So I want that information. I'm also going to leave that as data. I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm going to collapse this table. The next table I'm going to go into is my bins and lot or serial number table. The most important thing I want out of here is going to be my quantity, but I don't want quantity because a quantity on a receiver is going to be a positive number. A quantity on a ship dock is going to be a positive number. What I actually want is my movement quantity. That way I can see the positives and negatives. I'm going to add that over here. I'm going to set my movement quantity to the ledger column of running total because I want to see the inventory change on the transaction and what the result of that change is. I'm going to come back in here. The next thing I want is my value amount. I'm sure we've all talked about it before, but value is the actual cost of the item when it's added to inventory, plus or minus any value adjustments. You will see all the inventory movement on this report. You'll see the value get added to inventory, and you'll see the value get removed from inventory. This again, I want to see the amount that's being removed or added and what the result was. So I'm going to change that to running total also. I'm going to collapse that table. Obviously, I want to know my item name, so I'm going to add that in. Now, this ledger column is going to be a little bit different. Oop. Fat fingers. Come down here and choose my name field. When I click on the name, I'm going to set my ledger column to grouping. This is how I'm going to group my information. Now, we're going to have multiple levels of groupings, and you'll see how that takes effect. I want my customer or vendor name. I'm going to make this just a regular data field. We're leaving it here at data. I'm going to collapse that table. I'm going to go into my location. This is going to be my second grouping. So the first thing I'm going to have is my item. Indented underneath that are all the transactions tied to that location. And then indented underneath that with the next field is going to be the grouping for the name of the bin. So there's my grouping for the location. Collapse that. Go to my bin and drag in name. Make that an additional grouping. Now, I could run this right now, and it'll do this ledger for every item. Obviously, that's a ton of data. So we always recommend you save this on a specific item. Now, I could go into my items table, and I can grab the name and scroll down a little further. There it is. Drag in my name field. But notice at the bottom, it's wanting me to type it out. My spelling's not so good, so I personally don't use this filter. I would have to come in here and type it out like this, right? And now it's going to try to guess. Hopefully this is correct. Well, I personally don't like this one. I would strongly recommend going back to your bins and lot or serial number table and grabbing the item ID. I'm going to drag and drop that in. Down here at the bottom, I can start typing, and order time's going to start guessing for me. Now, I don't have to rely on my memory. I don't have to rely on my spelling skills. It's going to give me some prompts. I'm going to make my choices. Again, for this, we're going to select one item. And I'm not going to do a date range. I'm just going to let it pull all the transaction history of that item for every location and every bin. I'm going to come up to the top and hit view. I like to view first before I save. So that way, when I mess up, I can come back in and make changes, and I don't have to overwrite anything I've saved. I don't save too many reports that are not good. So what we have here is our first grouping is our item. Indented underneath that is the first location, ABS. And indented underneath that is the first bin name. Now, I have name, name, name. This is confusing to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and customize my report, and I'm going to change those captions. I'm going to clean it up, make it a little bit easier to read. Remember, part of this webinar is kind of showing some of the tips and tricks to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to pop in here, go to my columns. I'm going to change this caption to item. I'm going to change this. Always make sure to click out. If you don't click out, it doesn't fill in here, and then it won't save. This is going to be my loop. There's that fat finger again. And then I'm going to come in here and type in location. And then I'm going to come in here and type in bin. And now I'm going to hit view. All right, so we have our item name, our location, our bin. We see the date. Order time says if it was before 1970, it doesn't exist. All of time started at 1970. So you see this item had 0 quantity in 1970. On transfer number 52, I removed one piece, which left me with a -1. Down here at the Atlanta, we can see a little bit more detail because I have actual transactions there. You can see at the Atlanta location, again, for the same item, you see how there's no new item name here. The lines is separator between the next grouping. So there's my Atlanta location. Default bin, that's the bin of the Atlanta location. I see the first transaction here is I transferred in 5 pieces. That gave me a total of 5. The value of those 5 pieces were $35.11, which left me with $35.11. You can see I performed a value adjustment to that inventory. Value adjustment number 29. I added next to nothing in value. I added no quantity, left my total quantity at 5, but I added 2 cents in value, which increased my overall value for that inventory. Again, you can see I transferred in more inventory. These are all transfers and value adjustments. Clearly a location I don't utilize. I'm going to pop down here to something that might have some ship docks and receivers. I'm looking for location HQ. I'm following that column. All right. So here's location HQ. Here's a bin that was a default bin for this item for a long time. You can see the inventory's ins and outs. I went negative a whole bunch. I added in 31 new pieces. Because I was -3 when I did, it put me back at 28. Pretty quick, clean, easy report. Again, this is one that we as a team will always use if you tell us you have a quantity issue or a value issue. We're coming to this report to check and see, is there a transaction that's maybe not posted or not closed correctly? So that's what we're looking for. What I would do is I would come up to the top and I would hit my Save As button. Detailed. Again, tips and tricks, use all caps. That way it jumps out a little bit more when you're looking at your reports as a custom report. Ledger, webinar. I'm pretty sure I already have the detailed item ledger as a name. So I'm going to put webinar there and click OK. Give it a second to finish saving. Again, I didn't put a time filter on here, so this is a lot of data. This is an item I use on a lot of stuff. I can come in here and I can customize. And I can always add filters if I want to do a certain date range. Maybe I only want to see the movement for this year. Or maybe I want to swap the item. I can remove this item and I can just swap it. And I don't have to hit Save As. I can just hit View. And I'm just making a quick change without affecting my actual report. So looking at this item CR-0001 with the date of this year, you can see the different transactions. And then if I ever go back to my reports, go to all reports, I'm going to go to my general. I'm looking for the section inventory movement with bins because that's where we built the report. And there's my report. Again, you see all the all caps jumps out a little bit more than our standard order time reports. All right. The next report I want to look at is item sales pivot. We get the question a lot about forecasting. It's not currently a tool we have in the system, But what you can do is you can pull historical data and try to use that in terms of putting together formulas or collecting data to actually do your forecasting. So again, we're going to start with a brand new report. When you look at the sales pivot, a lot of times people will say, I want to see what I sold this year or maybe last year. And I want to see the total quantity of each item. So what I'm going to do is, since we're talking about sales, I'm looking at ship docs. Sales orders are the agreement between you and the customer, not actually what is shipped. So I'm going to look at my ship docs information because I want to know what's actually been moved. Again, before we add any tables, we're always going to change the type. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to choose pivot for this type of report. This is something you always want to check first. And now we're going to start adding tables. Again, always start at the top and work your way down. I'm going to start with my ship doc information because I want to know dates. For this type of report, we don't actually care about who the customer was because all we want to see is the individual items and the quantities of the items that have been sold over a certain time period. So I do, because I want quantities, I want the line item information. So I'm going to add my ship doc and customer return line items. I do want my item name, so I'm going to drag that in. Now, anytime you add the items table, you always want to check the join. You see it tries to join with additional fee, and it just tries because that's alphabetically the first option. I want the item name to join with the actual ship doc line items, so I'm selecting that. For this actual report, I don't care about anything else. I don't need to know about the customer. I don't need to know about payment information. All I care about are closed transactions, which items sold, and what quantity sold. So I'm going to go up to my columns. First thing I want is I want to know a date range. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose my date field. Once I add the date field, I'm going to select it. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom and I get to choose my date interval. So I want to see what's sold on a day-by-day basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. I am going to choose monthly just because it's easier to look at. And I'm going to make that my pivot. So I want to see the columns of each month. All right. That's all I actually need out of that table. The next thing I want is my item name. I'm going to skip past this one just because it's a little detailed and I want to point that out. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab my item name. The item name is super simple. We're not too worried about this. We're going to leave that as a type of row. I'm going to collapse that. And now I'm going to go into my line item information. Here I want my quantity. We're going to tell our quantity we want it to sum because we want to know the total. We don't want to see the line repeat for every transaction. And we are going to leave it like that for right now. So what I'm going to do to make this cleaner, easier to look at, is I'm just going to filter for a smaller set of items, and I'm going to filter for, let's say, this year. So I'm going to come on here. We're in the item section, so I'm going to come over here and go to item name. And the reason I'm doing item name this time is the filter I'm trying to use. I'm just trying to cut down the data to a small set of items that I use on a regular basis. So I'm telling it like CR dash. I have like 5 or 6 items with that abbreviation. So I'm just trying to cut down my data. I also want to filter and cut down just for a certain time range. So I'm going to filter and say, let's look at just this year. So I'm going to grab my date filter. There's my date. And I'm going to change that to this year. Now, even though I'm set to this year, remember when I chose the date filter here, I'm saying show me the information on a month-by-month basis. All right. So I'm going to come up here and click View. Oops, start. I need to change this to data. I missed that earlier. So this is my actual data that's going to be displayed in each column. The rows are just going to tell me the item, maybe the item description, the item group if I care about that. But my data is going to be my quantity. I'm going to come up and hit View again. All right. So here's my 3 CR items. You can see in the month of January in 2025, I sold 50,000 pieces. Now, one thing I didn't do was add a filter for posted. So right now this is all ship docs, whether it's closed or open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back in there and I only want to see my closed transactions. So I'm going to go to my filters, my ship doc table. I'm going to look for posted, posting date. So let's use posting date instead of date, because if it's not posted, it's not closed. We're going to use that filter. And we're going to do this year. All right. So with the posting date of this year, you can see I've sold 3 of this item in January, 0 of that item in February. Actually, I haven't moved that item a bunch. This item, this is the one I use the most. And you see I sold a bunch in January, none in February or March, but I sold it again in April and May. One of the things you can also do here is you can show the prior year's data. So if I go back to customize, I go to my columns, I choose my quantity. I now have a checkbox to show my prior year. Since I'm showing my prior year, I can show the quantity change. I can also show the percentage change if I want to. When you're showing this information, it adds a bunch of extra columns, so it could get cluttered. So you want to make sure your data is as filtered as possible. But let's just show the change for now so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to hit view. So we have our item. We have in June of 2025, 0 sold. In June of 2024, 0 sold. The change is 0. Here's this an item. This one I actually sold. June of 2025, I sold 2. Last year in June, I didn't sell any. The change is 2. So quick, easy way to pull some data there. All right. I'm going to look here. Okay. This next report honestly seems a little bit basic, but I get this question at least 2 times a week. This week I've gotten it 3 times already. And we just got a new price list from our vendor. We need to update our cost for each of our items from that vendor. How can we do that in bulk? The easy way to do this is pulling what we call an item vendor report. That's going to get us the item ID or the unique ID for the item and vendor combination. And we can add in whatever fields from that table that we want to update. So we're going to go back to our reports. We're going to go to new report. We want the item information. So I'm going to go to the items grouping of tables. For this type of report, we can leave it as tabular. We don't need it to be summary. We don't need it to be pivot. The tables that I need are the items table because I need to know the item name. I need the item vendors table because I want the combination of the item table and the vendor table. And I want the vendors table so I can see the name of the vendor that's attached to that record. Scroll down, find vendor, and drag that in. Again, we want to check the joins. The items table is our core table, so there's no join for it. It's our starting point. The items vendors table, you see it's joined with the items. The vendor table itself, if you check the join here, you see it's joined with the default vendor. So let's say my item, CR-0002, has 5 different vendors. Because the vendor table is joined with the default vendor, when I display that information, it's going to repeat the default vendor's name for each of the vendors listed under the item vendors table for that item. I don't want it to join like that. I want to see the individual items, so I'm going to change it to match with the item vendors itself. And I know that's a little bit confusing, so after we display it, I'll jump back in and show you the join. So if you see this happen, you'll see exactly what the mistake was. I'm going to go to my columns. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my item name. You can add description here if that's easier for you to see. I'm going to go to my vendors table, and I'm going to grab my name. I'm going to go to my item vendors table, and I'm going to drag in ID, and part number, and let's say cost, because that's what I'm really trying to update. Now, anytime we're doing exporting and importing through order time likes to use the ID as the record identifier. Because that's the one it wants to recognize, we want to move that to the top always. Just makes our life a little bit easier. There's our item name, our vendor name. Again, the columns are going to say name and name. So I'm just going to go ahead and change those captions and make that a little bit easier. So we have our ID, we have our item, our vendor, the part number, and the cost. This part number, just to make it clear, it's a vendor part number. And you can tell because it's the part number field from the item vendors table. All right. And let's hit view. Let's take a look at all my items. Okay. So what you'll notice here is on the left-hand side, you'll see some of these items repeat, and it's because I have multiple vendors listed for that item. Now, maybe this is a little bit difficult for me to look at. I want to group it maybe by the item so I can see all the vendors for that specific item to make it a little bit easier to look at inside of order time. I'm just going to hit customize, and I'm going to make the item name a section. I'm going to choose the item name. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to make that a section. I'm going to click view. Now what I've done is I've made the item in this blue bar. It's a section, and indented underneath of it is the vendor record, the vendor part number, and the cost. Let's use the find function in the browser, Control F, and we're going to pull up an item that I use a lot, and I know it has a bunch of vendors. And you see as I search using the find function in the browser, it jumps me right to that record on the report. There's all my vendors attached to it. There's my creative part numbers and my costs for each of those. Clearly super accurate. Definitely use this for good data. But real simple to build out. If I want to use this for importing purposes, this is the ID number that is the record that we need. This is the combination of that item in this specific vendor. It is not the item ID. It is not the vendor ID. It is the ID that is unique to this combination. Keep that in mind. And again, if this is something I want to keep, I'm going to hit save as, item vendors, and I would hit save. I think I already have this, so I might get an error. Yep, I do. All right, so those were the three most common reports that I get questions on a really regular basis. So I wanted to use those as our examples of how to navigate through the system, the importance of the order you add the tables, checking the joins, making sure you're checking the menus down here at the bottom when you add the columns. You always want to look down here how you can change your captions, create sections. You can add additional items to sections. You can create multiple sections if you wanted to. One of the things I do want to show before we open up to Q&A is we have just rolled out calculated fields. You notice that here. You can turn on calculated fields if you go into your admin, go to your company preferences. I believe it's under advanced, and down here at the bottom, enable report calculated fields. This one is going to come in very handy for the customers of ours that would like to see their average value of their current inventory value. So if I go to my general and I go to my inventory valuation, I'm going to hit customize. When you use a calculated field, to use a field that's on the report and do a calculation with it, it has to show in the columns. So right now I have quantity and value. If I wanted my calculation to involve standard cost, I could not use it because I don't show it here in this layout. So if I come in here and I go to add standard cost, I would be able to use it. So I'm going to add in standard cost, and we're going to do two things. First is going to be standard cost value, CD cost value. We're going to set this to an amount. We're going to hit property. We're going to do quantity. And we're going to hit property again, and we're going to pull in our standard cost. That's pulling off the item table here. You see the groupings. hit save. We're going to add in the multiply sign, eval, save. We're also going to add in a custom field for our average value. We're going to do amount, property. We're going to do our quantity, and we're going to do our value amount. Now, it is still a math problem, so it needs to be in the right order. So I'm going to put value amount in front of quantity. I'm going to add in my division sign. I'm going to hit eval. Not really sure. Again, we're still in beta. It says failed, but it will let me save, and it does do the math correctly. I'm going to come up to the top, and I'm going to hit view. And now you see I have my quantity, my standard cost, my value amount, my standard cost value, which is quantity times standard cost, and then my average value, which is value amount divided by quantity. So this is a new feature we kind of just rolled out. It is still in beta testing. We are trying to work with it and get it to work. And if you run into any errors with it, definitely let us know. Let us know what formula you used, what type of report you were building, so we can check the back end and see what we can do to fix that. Other than that, those were the only reports and topics I really wanted to show. I think at this point, Mike, if we want to open it up for Q&A. All right, sounds great. All right, so let's look at some questions here. Ideally, you're going to...
Sorry about that.
No, you're okay.
My mic on my headset was actually out. Yeah, we have some questions that are already in the chat.
There right now.
I believe the first question was, where can we find a diagram of the database schema so that we can better visualize the joins and table dependencies with all the fields? We've gotten this question a lot. The issue with a diagram is it would be fractal in nature because there's so many different tables that connect to each other. And then if you saw a diagram, it might say ID like 80 different times, because under every single table there will be a field that's called ID for that specific type of transaction. So what would your best suggestion be for that, Jason? Would it be to reach out to support to ask how to make that specific report, or how would you like that handled?
Yeah, unfortunately, we just don't have a good way of building out that schema. It is a trial and error, and if you get stuck, always reach out to support at OrderTime and ordertime.com. Almost always, certain errors are easy spots for us in terms of a join. Like a sales order report, if the name field is missing, it's almost always because the items table is joined with additional fee. But unfortunately, we don't have anything in the KBs. So it is, if you get stuck, just reach out to us and we can help you out.
Yeah, so for example, the one that you made an example of where it's like a report of all the assemblies where an item is used and how much is used in each assembly, you'd send in a ticket just like that saying that's what we're trying to do, and we can point you in the right direction with the tables and joins.
Correct. Right.
The next question was
also the API documentation that has a lot of the tables for each, and you can look at the actual columns and, you know, trial and error as well.
All right, and I can include that in the email that I'm sending after this with the recording. I can include links to a few of those so that you guys can check out like the documentation for a sales order, for example, so that you can see the fields that are in those KB articles.
I am seeing Doug's question here about the assemblies.
Yeah,
that's a simple where used report. If we go back up to our reports, and this is a good one because I do get this question at probably once a week, if not every other week. I'm going to do a new report, and I'm going to look at my bills of materials. Remember, this is where used, not where it's actually being used. So work orders are the implementation of the bills of materials. So I'm going to start with my bills of materials table or grouping of tables. I'm going to leave it with the type of tabular. I need my BOM. I need my steps. I need my components. I need the item. And notice the item joins with the bill of materials. This is my finished good items table. Well, if I drag in the item table a second time, you'll see it's item-2, and it joins with the components. If I come over to my columns and I go to my item 2 table, I'm going to grab my name field out of here, and I'm going to make this a section. This is going to show me my component as my section, and indented underneath of it, I want to know all of the finished goods, my item table. Go down here and find name. There it is. I also want to know how many are needed for that finished good. Now there's other fields I can drag into here, but real simple, quick and easy. Component is my section. Indented underneath of it will be the finished good and how many of my component are needed for that finished good. I'm just going to add a filter so it doesn't take forever to load. And I'm going to add in my component ID. I'm going to do this CR-002 because I use it everywhere, and hit view. So you see the item. Here's all the finished goods that it's in, and here's how many are needed for each of those finished goods. All right. How do we export, import, or report definitions so we can elaborate and share with others in forums? By definition, I'm assuming you mean the structure of the report itself.
Yes, that's correct. The structure of the report itself. By the way, thank you for that example. That was amazing. We're going to implement that later today. So thank you.
No problem. No problem at all. Like I said, that is one that we do get at least once a week or every other week. So I may have gone through that a little bit quicker than I normally would. So normally what I do when I'm sending this to somebody for instructions, if I can't hop in a call and I'm just going to send you screenshots, is I'm using this screen right here. I don't care so much about the tables because that's a lot of data that's not necessary. I go to my columns first. I screenshot this. These are the tables I've used. These are the fields I've used and which table they came off of. This is kind of where I start, and then I'll grab another screenshot of filters if I need to. But I don't believe there's a way to export the actual structure itself.
No, that's just good enough right there. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Let's see. Example, a list of all items, UOM set configured for each item, as well as the unit in the UOM set is configured for used as. I don't know if we can pull that. Let's take a quick look. So I'm going to go to my reports. I'm going to go into new report. I'm going to go to my items. I'm going to grab my item table. I'm going to grab my units of measure, but I also want my unit of measure set. Oops. Unit of measure set. And if I drag units of measure a second time, no, it won't let me. I can get the unit of measure set name and the primary unit of measure, but I'm not able to grab the purchased as, sold as, used as.
So thank you for confirming I'm not crazy then.
So not in the report. What you would really do here is you would check the item and see the UOM set, and then you'd use the profile list to check your UOM set itself.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've just run off. I mean, I've got 3 screens, but I would put them side by side on 2 different screens.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. It looks like, is there any reorder points material here? There is. So you can pull your reorder points. We can actually jump right back to this items table report, and you see the reorder point by location table. I'm going to get rid of these unit of measures. I'm going to pull in my reorder point by location. Is there anything else off of here I need? I don't think so. Nope, that all looks good. Again, it's better to have less than more. You can always come back and add additional things if you need to. And if you find out you're not using one of the tables, it's a good habit to remove the table from the report. Just helps it load a little faster. I'm going to go to my items table. I'm going to drag in my name. You know what I do need? Because I did reorder point by location. I only have the items table and the reorder point by location table. I need the location table so I can specify which one's which. So I'm going to go back to my tables. I'm going to look for my location. There it is. Drag that in. We're joined with a reorder point by location, so that's good. I'm going to put my location name. I'm going to go to reorder point by location. Max quantity, reorder amount, reorder point. And again, I'm just going to filter for a couple items to make it easier. Now with the item ID, I can do multiple items also. So there's the 02, there's the 01, there's the 03. I'm pretty sure 02 has data on it. There's my 02. It's the only one of those three that has that data. But you can see for each location what the max quantity is, the reorder point, reorder amount. All right. Are there any other questions I can try to help with now? And again, if there's specific reports that are unique for your company that you don't think are really relevant for this call, you can always send that request into support@ordertime.com. More than happy to take a look, see what we can build out, try to help you out there the best we can. I'm not seeing any other questions popping in here.
Yeah, if you want to ask a question at the bottom right of your screen, you can click on the chat box. Oh, there we go. We got one. And okay, there's the next one. When I run a sales report, currently it does not show how many kits I sold. It just sends out the total components, but sometimes we sell those items as components or as kits.
Ian, correct me if I'm wrong here, but for the sales reports with kits, you can either see the kits sold or the components sold. You can't see them combined.
No, we can't, but something that people have requested, if you need it sooner rather than later, we could do a custom data source for you. We do that.
This
So he's
person
asking,
said I would just
yeah.
like to see as kits for
Okay.
this example.
Pretty sure we can do that. Well, while we're in this training, I'm going to take an existing report and I'm going to tweak it. So I'm going to go to my ship docs. I'm going to go to my ship doc return detail. I'm just going to customize. I'm not even going to open it. Save myself some time so I don't have to wait for it to load. I believe I need to grab the I thought I was able to grab kit specific data from here, Ian. Am I not? Get rid of some of these tables real quick. Maybe if I clear it out and start from the beginning.
The only place that we potentially can do it is on the sales order side, not on
The sales order side. Okay.
ship side. So, yeah, that because the kits are not real items, they're kind of groupings of items.
Let's try that.
Let's see on the sales order line item what we have there. What fields,
And then
columns?
kit item.
No. Let's see. Let's just see the fields. Is there something called kit group in there?
There's not.
Or a kit number or something? No.
No. No, nothing relevant to a kit.
Well, this is where we would need to put it.
Okay.
So yeah, so that is not going to do anything.
Gotcha.
Hold on.
Yeah, it's what I'm wondering if we can put because cleared is still a line on the line item. I can do.
It's not. You're not going to get anything because there's
Okay.
because those. No, the join itself. I'm not sure about where it's going in terms of the join. It's
Okay.
going to the sales order line item kit. No, it's not going to work that way. So,
Okay.
maybe. I don't know. I have to take a look. Maybe you can try it.
Okay.
Remove the item.
Remove the item.
Yeah.
All right.
And try just any one of them.
Kit name. Let's go quantity, just because we can. And let's go cleared, because that's what I'm going to look for is my cleared lines.
Let's run it, see if it shows
Okay.
any.
And then doesn't really matter. Quantity, sum. Change this to a summary type report. Filter for date. It doesn't matter. I don't think I've sold enough for it to be a lot of data. That is a bill of materials. That is an actual kit. Sold, cleared. This is an assembly type item. That's an actual kit. That's a kit.
Assembly with a config then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is then the top node,
That's it right there.
the top blank one is the ones that are sold without a kit then?
Yes.
Okay.
So I could probably come back over here and go filters. Ooh, I don't know if it would be on their kit item.
Yeah. ID.
ID
Yeah.
is not 0.
Uh-huh.
Not equal to 0.
And I wouldn't sum those because it's
You'd want to see the individual transactions.
Yeah, I would want to see every item that's in there as well. Because you might want to, right, because when you're summing the quantity, you're summing all the selection quantities, probably.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And because I don't have individual transactions here, it's summing it anyways.
Right. But you can probably add the item and then group it by the kit item and see how that kind of shapes up. Yeah, things like that. See what you can do.
Okay. Yeah, that's how we break it apart. Notice that change I just made, by the way, is I had it in type of summary. That's why the item showed one time with the total quantity. I switched it back to tabular. Now you see the item repeat over and over for each transaction. Again, those types at the top, you always want to set that before you do anything else. A lot of times if you try and change the type after you've added columns, it'll break the report. So always try to start with that type. But yeah, it looks like this will work. And I could put transaction numbers, customer names on here, and I could see the individual transactions who bought what. The assembly type items on here have configurable options. So it uses the kit configurator, which is why it shows on this report also. All right.
Carol asked whether the recording will be available to us. Yes, I'm looking to get the recording out to all signups and all attendees by tomorrow, and it'll be sent to your emails that you signed up with. And the next question that had come up, Jason, was they were looking to set up a report that estimates raw material needs for a given finished good item.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of creating like a fake work order, is there a way I can create a report that shows me what my what my raw material needs are going to be and the associated cost if I want to make X amount of a finished good item?
You can now with that calculated fields. So if we go into production, we go into our bill of materials. We go customize report. We're going to go calculated fields. And you want to know the number of components needed. So I'm going to do a total components. Don't put a period in there. And then we are going to do a quantity. We're going to do property. I want to know my quantity per from my components. And then there, obviously the number that we're going to put in is dynamic. We're going to change it each time we run this. So I'm going to use a value. And I'm going to put in, let's say 15, because that's how many I'm going to try to build. I'm going to do our multiply. Quantity per time. Make sure that's in the right formula. Passed. That one works. And then the cost was going to be the total cost for the finished good, or is that total cost for the component? I mean, either way, it's going to be the same thing. It's just which field do we use? I want to make X amount of a finished good item. So I would assume the
Total cost for the component, he said.
Okay. So then we're going to come in here, component costs. Again, terrible speller. Don't judge me terribly. Go to amount, come in here. We're going to do our standard cost, but we're going to pull it from the component. Well, I guess it's going to be our item 2 standard cost, because that's our component cost. And then we're going to do our value, because we're going to tell it how many we're going to try to make. And then we're going to do our multiply sign, eval, save. Now I can hit view. Should have filtered for one item to make it smaller, but 15 times quantity per of 2 gives me 30. My 15 times my cost, which I'm not sure where it's coming up with that number. I might have pulled from the wrong table. Is 15 times 15 225? It sure is. That's why it's repeating. I grabbed the wrong cost. I got to grab it from the item 2 table, not the item table. Component cost. Click edit. We're going to edit that. We're going to pull from the item 2 standard cost. Save. Eval again. Save. View. All right. Nope. Still not working right. Again, it's in beta. That's something we'll look at.
I think you should delete the whole the whole calculation.
Remove it.
Yeah.
Try and re-edit it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to set it back to the type of amount. Component. It's probably because I spelled it wrong. Cost. We're going to do property. First one is going to go item 2. Standard cost. Save. We're going to grab our value. We're going to multiply this by 15 again. Save. Multiply. Eval. Save. View. I'm thinking it's recognizing because the field names are the exact same. It's not referencing the separate tables. That's just me.
Wait, so the value, can it be a text type? It doesn't have to be a number type for it to do the math?
Oh, wait, sorry. I thought I set it to amount. Yeah. I set it to type of amount.
Okay.
For it to do the math, you've got to do it based on the type of result you're trying to see. So quantity times cost is going to give me an amount.
Thank you.
What quantity are you using?
I am using quantity from, it's a value. It's a manual input. It's not a standard field.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
Because you have to multiply it by the quantity per too. So just
okay.
But we can take a look at that.
Yeah, yeah. Again, this is in beta. It's something we're working on. It's working pretty good for the most part, but still work in progress.
Yeah, Ryan, can you please send in a ticket for that? I want to take a look at that too. We're doing some more testing too.
Awesome.
And any other questions before we end the call? No problem, Ryan. All right, and I'll make sure that the recording gets out to all of you by tomorrow. And I see a bunch of you guys use note-taking apps, so I'm sure that you've got your own type of recording too. But I'll make sure that any notes that Jason has for his presentation also get included in the email, and you guys will get it all. All right, that's going to be the end. Have a good day, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye, everybody.